Yeah, 8:30 yesterday night.
Something like that. What time do you have there now? Like 7:40 or something?
7:40. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, we'll finish at 8:30 p.m. your time. Yeah, I'm really proud of us that we have this half-hour time zone here. It really makes things easy. I should start doing more collaboration with Indians. I think they have that time zone too, right?
Yeah, they have the half an hour
Yeah.
thing as well.
At least then don't need to adjust all the time.
Is it just one time zone there that is shifted half an hour, or all the time zones in Australia are like this?
No, just us. So Melbourne is half an hour ahead of us. Same for Sydney, and then Perth and so on. I think 2.5 behind us.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it really makes sense. It's a fantastic invention. Just wish that was a piece of open source code somewhere that we could just go in and fix.
Oh my.
Okay, well, it's 10 past here. It's 40 past where you are. So, seem to have slightly smaller live audience today. But I guess we might as well get started. So, welcome to the next lecture of our software process improvement course. My great pleasure today to introduce a guest speaker. So, we have a guest speaker today. He's a professor at the Federal University of Technology of Rio Grande do Sul. No, that's not right. That's where you did your master's. Why am I looking at the wrong line of your CV here? Yeah, I have your CV open and I read out the wrong line. That's fantastic. Federal University of Technology Paraná. There we are. Where he's a professor. He did his PhD at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Until very recently, he was in Northern Arizona. At Northern Arizona University as an assistant professor, and he's probably the person that I know who knows most about open source. I see you're already sharing your slides. Fantastic. So I'll hand over to Igor now, who's going to tell us how to contribute to open source, which I think will be highly relevant to your projects. Igor, over to you.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you for inviting me once again. It's always a pleasure to give this lecture. So today I'll talk about the process of contributing to open source. This thing follows me since early 2010s when I started researching on the topic. But my life in open source is kind of older than that. I worked for a company in mid 2000s, and at that point they were migrating everything to open source. So I had a really nice training in the field when open source was like not well organized as it is today, and it brought me up some good skills and brought good knowledge. And when I uh, when I joined university as a lecturer, I wanted to make it happen for the students there as well. And that's where everything that I researched so far started, because I saw that people struggled a lot when they were attempting to make their first contribution. And then I started researching this, and this became a thing. And now I try to every year bring new things. Now we have GitHub. Now we have a lot of things to facilitate our life. But still, when you think about how big open source is, this can be sometimes scary, right? Uh, so this is a little bit about me, and this is a little bit about where I am. So I'm more or less 12 hours behind you in a state called Paraná in Brazil. So I'm in the south of Brazil. I think we're almost in the same latitude, right? More or less. I'm a little bit to the north, maybe. So this is exactly where my city is. So I'm in the countryside of a state called Paraná. It's close to Argentina and Paraguay. So just taking a closer look here. Uh, if you are asking yourselves, okay, it's Brazil, it's close to Amazon and whatever. No, we are really far from Amazon here. Christoph knows that. It's like a 5-6 hour flight if you want to go to Amazon. So Brazil is quite big in the north south dimension. Uh, I was this is my home region, born region. So I was born close to the city where I live today, and I spent 4 years in northern Arizona, as Christoph mentioned. And open source has is coming with me in this whole process. And when we think about open source, the first thing that we think about is like, okay, it's something that everybody can contribute. So I can. If everybody can, I can. And that's quite something quite like this, but not that much. It's an open collaboration community where you are able to take part, but it's not a guarantee that you can contribute to. Open source just means that the code is open. The code is licensed in a way that you can have access to everything. I think Christoph talked about this. And again, this does not guarantee that they will accept your contribution. This doesn't even guarantee that you are able to contribute to it. But for the projects that we are able to, of course, these are the most of the cases. Gated communities are not that common these days. You can do it in many ways. So if you look back like 15 years ago, I would say like open source is almost all about code. But currently, we've been doing some research related to what are the ways that people grow in open source and what are the pathways that they tend to have. And we see that communities are in need of many other kinds of contributions, which include, for example, designers, graphical designers, documenters, translators, support people, issue triagers, and even user support. So if you're not a techie, if you're not a geek, there is a place for you as well. If you don't know about the language that people develop your software, there is a place for you as well. And one very good way to start is doing something that is natural, that is not technically related to what there is no relationship with the technical side of the project. So we get used to the process side and the social side of the project. So this is quite important to understand when we talk about the contribution process, that it's a process, that you deal not only with code or with the artifact that you need to change. You need to understand how the thing works, and that it involves other people on the other side. So it's not all about, okay, I'm a good coder, so I will just sit down here, fix a bug, and that's it. No, there are rules, and there are social conventions, and there are process conventions. So we need to be aware of all of this, okay? So is it just click and go? No. It seems to be quite straightforward, but when we analyze the life of a bunch of new developers, newcomers, we see that there are so many picky things that you need to observe and you need to have in mind when you start your contribution process, and say, okay, I need to understand how to move ahead before I move ahead. And you see some of them in this 40, 50 minutes that we'll talk to you. First thing is, it can be tough. It's not always tough, but it can be, depending on the community you pick, depending on the technology you're dealing with, depending on the process that you need to follow and everything. There will be a bunch of barriers, regardless the path you take. So you can go in one way or the other, or you can do documentation or code, and barriers will be there. They will be slightly different, but they will be there, and you need to be aware of. Some of them will not be you will not be able to avoid, so you need to overcome. So there are some that, regardless the path you take, you need to deal with. Okay. So when we're starting, this is related to open source, but it can be related to any software project. I would even make a little bit of a stretch here and say it's related to anything that you do in our lives where we are new to. So when we migrate to another country, when we move to another city, when we start shopping in a new supermarket. We must, the first thing that we need to do is like orient ourselves in that space, right? It's like when I talk about space, I'm not talking about physical or location. I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about where the resources are, what can I do and what I cannot do, what path I can follow and what path I cannot follow. If I move to Australia, I need to be aware that you guys drive in the right side, not in the left side as we do here. So there are some things that we need to be aware before going. It's like, oh, so I'll go to Australia, I'll drive a car. No, it's not that simple. I need to be aware that things are a little bit different. Laws may be different. So I need to orient myself. And this is on me. And this is what open source people also expect, that you orient yourself given the maps and the directions that are available there, okay? The problem is the maps and the directions are kind of not well structured. In some projects, okay, this is good, but in some projects, like you'll be redirected to things that are outdated. You will be redirected to things that are already done, and when you start to do the thing, it's closed. You will be there will be signs showing you to go in one direction, but that's not the right one. So it's not that easy. It's like someone tricking you the whole time if you don't know the right way to look at. Okay, so what we usually say is that if you have the right support, it'll be way easier for you. So if I go to, if Christoph lived in Brazil for a while, Christoph knows that there are some rules that are just rules that nobody follows. They're just there. And if you follow their rule, it'll make you a dumb person, because you will not be able to do a bunch of stuff that everybody does. The rules there, the laws there in US as well. There are some rules from some laws from the 15th century. It's like, for example, in Texas, you cannot roll a barrel on the street. So if you follow everything, it's like, okay, so what am I doing here? You need to understand what are the rules and what is the culture, what is right and what is wrong in that context. And that's the tough thing when we talk about open source projects. And how hard is it? So this is, I would say, the main contribution of my PhD, like, oh, it's 6 years ago, Christoph, that I defended. That this is a map. I don't expect you to read this, okay? It's just to show you how big things are. So I've structured 50-something different barriers that newcomers face recurrently when they're trying to make their first contribution to open source. Of course, this is too big. I don't want you to take a look at that. So they are mainly related to this stuff. So we have things related to communication on both sides. Newcomers just don't know how to communicate. Community is kind of harsh and not welcoming. There are things related to the characteristics of the newcomers, like, am I a good fit for this project? How is my level of commitment here? Whatever. Orientation is a mess. That was one of the main findings. And this is closely related to documentation, because documentation in some projects is not a plus. It's a negative point, because instead of helping you, they misguide you. There are things related to cultural differences, and this is quite impressive. When we talk about Brazilian and German people, we see these gaps. And this was the funny side is that I have 3 people that I talked to that I could come to this example, like American and Brazilian and German and Brazilian people. They talk in different tones, and the level of objectivity is kind of different. And of course, there are technical hurdles. Technical hurdles, I'd say, is not an open source related problem. It's a software development related problem. Any field or any project will find this, but the other ones are totally more related to open source, although I think most of them will be present in companies as well. So what do we need to think on our side if we want to contribute. And this is where we start. You are the ones that will have to make your contributions. So you need to make sure that these three things are key. So that you have these three things when trying to contribute, when making your attempt. First is proactivity. The communities will expect you to be proactive, to look for things before asking, for example, to go back to the community when they review something, to answer something when they, to acknowledge when they answer something, to let them know if you gave up something. So it's you. Do not expect the community to go and try to find you, okay? Social skills are important. You will need at least to talk to someone to say, okay, this is my contribution. Or when you're selecting an issue to work with, you need to tell them, is it still available? What's the good way to start? Can someone guide me on that? So at least you have two interactions with people. First one in the issue, the second one when you send your contribution. And I can guarantee that's not that simple. There will be multiple iterations during this process. So make sure that you feel part of that and make sure that you try to expand that. During your contribution process, do not feel like an island. Okay? Communities are usually there to support, okay? Some people really like to support, and I'm pretty sure that if you go to the communities that are supportive to newcomers, and it's easy to know when they'll have like specific guidance for this kind of people, you will find really welcoming and helpful people. And of course, you need the right technical skills. While on the social side, it's a generic kind of thing. When you go to the technical side, you need to make sure that you have at least a small fee. Like at least the programming language that they use is something that I know. Okay, but it's better if you know like the frameworks that they make use, the different technologies that they make use, the building system, whatever. Okay. Some barriers you will just avoid. You don't need to face them, but some of them we need to persist. So key things: persistence, social skills, proactivity. None of them are technical. For me, these are way more important than just the technical. But does it mean that I don't need to know how to code? No, I didn't say that. I did say that you need to have these three skills. You need to be aware that you need to focus, you need to be persistent, and you need to have social skills. Okay? Whoops. Another important thing is the contribution process is project dependent. What does it mean? It means that just because you know how to contribute to one project, it doesn't mean that you know how to contribute to all the projects. Process may be similar, but a bunch of things are maybe different. Okay? Standards may be different. The way they accept code, the way they assign tasks, the way they allow you to work on something. License is different, so this is something that you need to be aware of. What am I doing? So the process is project dependent. It may be that for one project, you are just better than for the other. It may be the case that for one project, the process is easier than for the other, okay? So you need to understand that at least these 3 points may be are probably potentially different. The way they interact. In some projects, for example, if you have a question, you go and you open an issue and you ask a question. In some projects, they use specific channels for different things. So you have a channel to discuss technical stuff. You have a channel to discuss newcomer-related stuff. You have a channel to discuss the process. The other things like tool and infrastructure. In some cases, you have like, they will tell you, use this kind of tool, use this IDE, we use this continuous integration tool, we use this test suite, whatever. So the infrastructure is different in the sense that, okay, we use this kind of server, we build for all these different kinds of platforms. So you need to be aware about all of this before you start, before you put your finger on something, okay? And the last thing is that submission and review process will potentially be different. But all of them will use, like, if I go to GitHub, it'll be kind of similar, right? Yeah, like the meta thing, yeah, you have like the fork pull request process in place. We fork the thing, you make your changes, and you create a pull request. But some projects will accept pull requests in the master. Some projects will have to create a branch and make a pull request in that branch. Some projects will not even accept pull requests. You need to branch out the thing and try to send a patch somehow. So there are some projects that are just mirrored in GitHub. But the process is not through GitHub. Clear example is Linux. They are there. Linux project is there, but they do not accept pull requests. Okay, so you need to go through another way. You can download your code, you can have a fork and everything, but you need to submit the patch through their main version control system. And what I'll talk about now is more specific. So I tried to during my career as well to come up with a streamlined process on how to contribute. This is not like 100% accurate. This is not like, okay, if I follow this step in this order, everything will go okay. This is just like the core activities that you need to think about and work on when you're starting to contribute to. So there are 6 main activities here. And I would say that the first one is the only one that is the first one that you need to do before the other ones. Before you do anything, learn about the project. Where are the resources? What do you need to know about it? Technically, socially, process-wise, whatever. So to do that, you need to think that open source is a community. Usually, the projects are communities. I always tell students and whoever I talk to that the technical, the formal side of open source is the license, but there will be no open source if there is no community. I have my toy projects licensed as open source. Does it mean that this is a good open source project? If nobody uses, who cares, right? So if there is no community, there is no open source. So when you're starting to know the project, when you're starting to think about contributing, think about it. Do not hide, be someone, try to engage on the social side. Understand how the social side works. Do your part, respect the others. Try to understand that most of the other people, many of the other people on the other side are volunteers as well. They do not have any obligation to help you out. If they are doing it, it's because they want to. Okay? Be proactive. Search for resources. Search for the standards. Look for these kinds of information here. At least this. You need to know before you start. You need to know this stuff. If you don't know one of these, stop. Go back and learn this. Where is the project page? I'm not talking about GitHub page. Does the project have another one? Like that talks about the business side? What is the project about? What is the vision of the project? Why should I know that? You are trying to get involved. You need to know what they are up to, right? Where is the repository? The main repo. Is there a mirror? Like I'm dealing with something. I just mentioned Linux. The repo is there in GitHub, but this doesn't mean that I will contribute to GitHub. I will contribute to the other mirror. Where is the issue tracker? Again, GitHub is one platform. And I know multiple projects that do pull requests, but do not do issue tracker on GitHub. Where is the actual issue tracker? Where should I look for issues? Map all the communication means. And make sure that you don't mess up what you post where. They will get mad at you if you do usually. So if you go to, for example, to the mailing list where they discuss the next steps of the project and you come up with like I'm not able to set up my workspace. Can someone help me? I would not be surprised if someone says like, I don't care. Go to the right mailing list, and they do not even point to you what the right mailing list is. Okay, so make sure that you know what are the right resources, what are the right communication means. They usually have multiple. They usually have fast channels for newcomers to talk to the developers, synchronous chats and IRC or Discord or Gitter, whatever. There are communities out there that still use IRC, so there are multiple channels. So make sure that you skim through the pages to find out where to find the developers, where to find the right people. There are some communities that even tell you, like, if you want some help, if you're a newcomer, try to reach out to one of these developers directly. There are cases like this, yeah, that will be someone to mentor you during the process, okay? And other resources, like, are there wikis? Are there other documentation that I should look at? Are there things that are outside GitHub that are important that I should look at? So try to map everything in the very first step. And at least these 5 points are important, okay, at least, yeah? If there are any technical document, this is quite important. Like there is a architectural design document. Go through it. If they put it there, maybe it's important for you to understand the modules and how they interact. And when you're contributing, you have to take a look at this most probably. So I'm not saying that you need to know everything about each of these topics. You need to map them out. So if you need some to explore some of these resources, you know where they are, okay? Then, okay, this is the second step from the process that I try to streamline. It's like, okay, now I have to work on setting up my workspace. And when I talk about setting up workspace, I mean like getting the code and make it run. When you're developing something, the first thing that you need to know is how to make that thing work on your side, okay? It may happen, and in most cases it will happen, that you have some issues with your environment. Libraries are missing, libraries in the wrong version, and it will conflict to other things that you compiled on your machine. Your kernel version is not the correct one to run the thing. It will happen, like if you go to lower level programming languages, if you go to projects that use C, for example, 99% chance that you'll have some issues with the libraries that it needs to compile. Oh, I have some students once trying to develop for LibreOffice, and I think 2 or 3 years I used this consecutively. This was the case that I used in my class, and 100% of the students could not make it work in the very first 2 weeks of their contribution process. So don't underestimate. Some projects will now give you some nice resources. So for example, they'll give you guidelines, like do this, do that, download these specific libraries here, you need this thing. If you have this error, it's related to this thing here. We know some specific errors and we know how to deal with them. Do not use this version, this distribution of Java SDK. Use the black blah, blah, blah SDK version X. So pay attention to this. This is quite important. Sometimes they'll even say like, okay, we don't know if it runs on Windows machines. Nobody in the development team used it. So we are all on Mac or Unix. So it may run, but we are not providing any guidance on how to make it run. So this is quite important. They will provide you these resources, and most probably they'll say what is the best way to go. Things to have in mind and to try to find out when you find guidelines or ways to set up your workspace. Is it OS dependent? I just meant like some projects will just run on Linux. Some projects will just run on Windows. Do we need specific versions of something? Do they recommend a specific IDE? So if you're starting in the project, start with the recommended settings. Do it. Disk availability, this is another case from LibreOffice side. It's like, it was not a single person. Like every semester, there was someone struggling with that. It's like, okay, I figured out that when compiling, it grows so big that the partition that I created to run this thing was not enough. And sometimes it's easy to figure out. Sometimes it just pops an error and you don't know what the error is about and you need to dig deeper. But you're a newcomer. It will take you like 3-4 days for you to figure out that it's about disk availability. Okay. This is a secret way to go. This is the best way to go if you are not using the same OS as the recommended one. Some projects will provide you with a snapshot. This is not like very common, but they will provide with a Docker or a snapshot of a VM that will work for you. Okay, Docker is becoming more and more common, but snapshots of VMs are becoming less and less common. But usually they'll just say like this operating system, this IDE, these libraries, whatever. But if you're dealing with something that is low level, again, C, if you need to run a big project written in C, go for a VM. So you don't lose whatever you have if you start dealing with different versions of the things, uninstalling and installing dependencies. It may mess up your operating system or platform, okay? So if you're able to do these two things, you are able to start doing whatever you want. So from here on, you can start lurking the code if you want. You can start looking at the architectural side to see, okay, I want to look at this model, or I want to work on this module here. I want to work on the UI thing, and you can start dealing with the code, or you can move ahead and try to find a task to work with. This is again something that well-structured projects and welcoming projects will make sure to point you out in the contribution guidelines. So they'll have like, okay, try to find issues like this, or we use this label here to help you out. So if you go to GitHub, usually they have labels there, good for newcomers, beginner only, good first issue, low-hanging fruit. So you just need to find out what kind of label do they use. The standard for GitHub now, the new project, it comes up with the standard one is good first issue, as far as I remember. So this is the standard one, but many projects use different ones. So make sure that you know what they are doing and what they are, how they are tagging things. Even if they don't tag, try to take a look at the contributing guidelines, which is the file contributing.md. In the case of GitHub, this is the standard now. Maybe they'll point out, I try to find things related to UI. These are the low-hanging fruits for this project, and whatever. Okay, labels, as I mentioned, yeah, it's good first issue. They also recommend, so this is a GitHub page, they also recommend the help wanted label, but I would not go that route, because help wanted can mean one thing to one community and other things to other communities. So if you're looking at help wanted, try to take a look at the meaning of this label in their documentation before you move ahead and do something, okay? Okay, you found the issue, you found a set of issues. This is another hint. Do not stick with one issue. Try to find a set of issues that would be nice and rank them. It's like, I'll try this one. If not, I'll try this. If not, I'll try this. And the very first thing that you should do is reproduce the issue. Reproduce the bug. Make sure that the new feature that they are requiring is not in place yet. Why? Because you're maybe dealing with something that is not there anymore. But if someone worked on that issue, shouldn't that be closed? Yeah, it should. But again, maybe it's not. Maybe it was a duplicate and they closed one and the other one is still alive. So make sure before you start doing any technical work, make sure that the issue is there. There are many ways to do that. The first one, of course, is like you have the thing running. See if you can reproduce the issue. The second is confirm with the community. It's like, is this issue still an issue? It's like, is it still open really? Is there anyone else working on that? That's another question. Because sometimes there's someone internally working on that. It's not just explicit there. And make sure that you leave your footprint there. It's like, if nobody's working here, I will take a step now. Make sure that you make the community aware that you're working on that. And in the same way that you make them aware that you're working on that, if you give up, make them aware that you gave up. So you make the resource available again. Okay, this is quite common for issues to stay there for like months, just because someone said like, okay, I'm working on that. So if I go there and I want to contribute to that project and I go to the issue, it's like, I'm working on that. It's like, maybe there's someone. If someone more experienced with the process, they will ping the project back. It's like, do you think that this person is still working on that? Or you label the person and say like, hey, John, are you still working on that? Okay. And then you can dive in the code. Okay. And now I chose the issue to work, and what to do now? And I would say that from the technical perspective, this is the showstopper. This is the blocker. It's like, okay, I found it, and millions of lines of code. What to do now? Okay, you can use grep to try to find keywords in the code. There are many ways to do that. One of them is, of course, you are a techie and you want to dig deeper, you go. The second one is always go back to the community. It's like, I want to work on this issue. Any hints on where should I look at first? Do you know which artifacts should I understand to work on that? Or again, like try to figure out looking at the architecture of the thing. Like I'm dealing with, okay, this issue is about database access. So try to figure out where in the architecture is the database access, are there database access artifacts? If you do that, you just go ahead. And of course, if you want to do the opposite, try to find out more or less where you're touching and go back to the community. They will love you even more. It's like, okay, I did my job here, I did my homework, and I think that to solve this issue, to fix this bug, I'll have to change one of these things here in this module. Am I going to the right direction? This is even more welcoming from their side. They say like, okay, this person is really interested. This person is really willing to help. And for some communities, if you go and say, I'm a student for this course here and I'm dealing with that, you'll be really well received. But the opposite can also happen. Because they know that you will be a drive-by, and sometimes they do not like drive-by profiles. So make sure that they welcome any kind of contributions, even drive-bys, before you introduce yourself as a drive-by contributor. What do you mean by drive-by? It's like, imagine that you are the maintainer of a project and every single year someone introduces themselves as like, okay, I'm Igor, I'm a student from Brazil, and as part of my assignment here, I have to contribute to open source project, and I would be more than happy to contribute to yours, okay? Where should I start? Every single year, 10 students. And I put two of my core developers to help these people. So they're spending, I don't know, 20 hours of their development time to guide these people that will not come back. So make sure that the project wants this kind of things. What I'm saying here is not to scare you. This is not common, okay? This is not a common behavior. I'm just saying that this may happen. The common behavior is for the projects to be welcoming. if you introduce yourself, and if you talk about your skills and how do you think you are a good fit for that project. And if you know, like, okay, I found an issue, I found more or less where to work with, I would change something to fix, do it. Apply your change in the code. And while making these changes, go back to the contributing NG, to the contribution guidelines. Go back to the standards. Go back to the documentation of the project. You need to be strict about standards, to be strict about process, to be strict about all kinds of artifacts you need to make available. Some projects will demand you to have a unit test to make sure that the unit tests are covering the thing that you just changed, that you just created. Some projects will just accept your change if you change the release notes. Some projects will just accept your change if you agree with the license agreement before you submit your code. So make sure that you go back and understand everything to avoid unnecessary iterations, okay? It should be explicit somewhere. And usually if you go through GitHub, you have the fork, you make your changes, you will commit to your repo, push to your own GitHub account, and make the pull request. And then you just wait for the review. So when you do that, you can think like, okay, it's done here. I just sent my code, but no. And we go back to proactivity, you go back to commitment. After you submit your thing, take ownership. If you want your contribution to happen, you need to own it. You need to make sure it goes until the end. Check the pull requests, or if you go to other way, for example, if you're doing Gerrit, if you're doing a patch through Bugzilla, whatever, check how the review process is going. Are they requesting something else? Are they asking questions? Go back, fix the issues, discuss if you think you're right and they're wrong. The review process is not something like something that is one way only. It's a two-way, it's a discussion. And the community likes discussions. They would like to make sure that the contribution was made in the best way. They want to make sure that the standards are being followed, that the project will receive a nice piece of code, that you're not adding any vulnerabilities or security flaws or whatever, that the tests are passing, that the build is okay. So reread the contribution guidelines at this point if you have questions, if you think you're missing something, if someone requests you something that is like, but it doesn't make sense. You're an outsider at this point. You need to make sure that you understand what's going on. So go back to the contribution guidelines. This is something that you need to know from the first step. Where is the contribution guidelines? It's something that you need to look at in every single step that you go through. Okay? And if you follow these things after you submitting your pull request, if you own it, I'm pretty sure that you'll be really happy with your contributions, because this is something that is nice about contributing to open source. You will be part of something really big, regardless the size of the project. You will be part of that thing, and you can add that to any resume that you have. You can tell like your grandpa, like, hey grandpa, do you know your browser that you're working with? Yeah, you know, I helped developing this thing. So, but the feeling about now, seriously, the feeling is really good when you get something accepted by a project that you maybe didn't even know before you started that contribution process. But the key to success when you have everything figured out is to own it. So in a study that we conducted like 4 years ago, we found out that many people that we called quasi-contributors do not have their contribution accepted just because they didn't own it, just because they didn't get back. They were almost there, and after the review, the first review, they've never showed up to fix even small issues. So this is one of the outcomes of my research. We try to just organize the things. I have to confess that I have to give some more attention to this. So we have a student that is trying to automate the process of collecting stuff so we can feed this portal. The portal was idealized as a way to match the resources with the barriers that we found. So it would be easy if I'm stuck somewhere. It's like, oh, I don't know how to set up my workspace. I would have exactly that thing here in the portal showing the way to figure out the issues related to that specific barrier. And with that, I finish my presentation. And if you have questions, I have to have 5 minutes.
That's right. Thanks, Igor. Well done. I'll just open the chat window here. So in case anybody has questions for Igor or questions about contributing to open source, the next 5 minutes will be a good opportunity to do that.
And you have my email here, and you have even my Twitter handle. So feel free to reach out if you're shy and you don't want to ask the questions now. I encourage you to ask the questions, because maybe someone else will have the same questions and are shy as you are. I'm a nice guy.
Most of the time. And you've worked with some of the open source projects that we're trying to make contributions to as part of this course as well. So we have a few teams working on JabRef, a few teams on Zettler. I don't know if you've seen Zettler before.
I know about it, but
right. A few on Pigments, and one team on a Rust project whose name escapes me right now. Yeah, so we have a good variety.
The robot operating system.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, nice. This is nice. No movement here.
Nope, no questions. Everybody's happy.
Do you have any questions, Christoph?
Well, the first thing that the students will need to do now, so like I said earlier, I've assigned issues to most of the teams yesterday. The others, I'm still waiting for their top 3. Maybe you can just, I know you said it during the presentation, but sort of just talk a little bit about what should they post on that issue now. So they know that this is likely the issue that they are going to work on. They'll have about 2 months and a bit left. What should they post on that issue now?
So they chose already?
Yes, so they chose the top 3, and then I made the final choice for them because I wanted to make sure no 2 teams are working on the same issue. Because,
of course,
as you would know, only one contribution can make it.
When they have this close, okay, this is the issue that I work with, I will encourage, if these are the projects that you just mentioned, I would encourage them to introduce themselves okay, I'm a student of this course here, this is my background, I would like to help, and so would this be a good idea to work on this issue? Is it still available? Can I start working? So you cover both things, you get the issue at the same time that you're asking. I would not make 2 iterations, I would not ask first, is this still available? And then you ask them. I would do the same thing in one issue. But I would introduce myself as a student, an undergrad student, blah, 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 as this shows them that your credentials to contribute to that project. Because they don't know you. So they need to know something about you. At least I'm here, I know Java, and I'm willing to work on that because I know this and this, I have this and these skills. And maybe when they look at your skills, they would just say, it would be better for you to work on that issue, because they would know sometimes something else that you should do.
Yeah, and just to clarify, if that happens, of course, we're flexible with your teams and switching to a different issue. I see there's a question in the chat now.
Yeah.
What are the most important steps to get a contribution accepted?
All of them. but seriously, like the first step for me is the key. It's like you need to know the project. You need to know everything where the resources are. I think this is key from the beginning. Because if you need to know where the resources are, where to ask questions about whatever you have, who are the key personnel on the team, what are the steps to follow to run your workspace, and what are the standards, you have everything in your hands. So you don't need to know, again, you don't need to know everything up front. You need to know where to go if you have those questions, if you reach that point. And if you're talking about the code, let's move ahead. I was talking about the process. If you talk about the code, make sure that you strictly follow the standards that they're following. Second thing, it's well known in the literature, make small commits. If your contribution will deal with different problems, make 2 single contributions. Smaller pull requests with less lines, less commits, the likelihood to be accepted for these smaller contributions are way higher than some things with 4, 5, 6 commits with 7, 8, 9 files changed. So these are key. Make sure that you follow the guidelines. I think this is the most important thing. Tests, make sure that you make a good impression that, okay, I know what I'm doing, I'm following the easy steps. Because if you fail the easy steps, it will become harder because they'll be picky with you.
Any other last minute questions? I think we're sort of out of time now anyway. Thanks
Thank
to
you,
Igor. Yeah, I can only follow that as well. Thank you, Igor, for a very good guest lecture. I think this will be very useful for the students because they'll have to go through all of these steps very soon. So I think hearing your perspective from your experience on this has been very useful. So thank you very much.
You'll have a non-painful process. Let's hope for the best.
At least we've convinced the maintainers, or the maintainers of the projects already know that there will be contributions coming from students, so that usually helps a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of these barriers, like you said, will still be there.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Igor.
Thank you, Green. Thank you.
I'll close the Zoom session now, and Igor, then we can continue on WhatsApp.
Perfect.
All right.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you again.
Bye.
Yeah, you got a few thank you messages there. Very good.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
You have a wonderful day there.
We'll try our best.
So shall I leave and we go to WhatsApp then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
See you there in a bit.
See you.